In the last video, I covered all the different fibers that gloves leave behind, but that was really it. It doesn't actually go into the actual forensic system. This video will be a quick dive into the forensic system. So say you picked up a crowbar by accident and you didn't have your gloves on. Well, that means you are going to leave your fingerprints on said crowbar, and fingerprints are unique per person. Those fingerprints can then be looked up at a criminal records computer. You can even filter by fingerprints or DNA. We'll get into DNA right after the fingerprints. So if you got to this point where you accidentally touched something and left your fingerprints behind, that's okay. Also, if you ever touch something wearing like a unique type of glove, yellow insulated gloves are not falling into this category, but we're just going to demonstrate here, for example. So this crowbar has my fingerprints on it and my gloves on. Let's say you made a mistake and you managed to get both on something. Well, there are items in the game such as soap and damp rags. Damp rags can be crafted with one cloth. Soap can be found anywhere. You can make it. You can buy it as a syndicate. However, this isn't a perfect solution. If you take one of these items and right-click a crowbar or any item you've touched, you can remove the evidence from it. It is a pretty lengthy process, especially with a damp rag, in order to do this, but this is still not a perfect solution because you're still going to have to touch the rag or the soap, and there's a new type of evidence that'll be left behind. So in this case, with the damp rag, it is white synthetic fibers. If I use soap to clean the crowbar, well, I'll actually end up cleaning what I already cleaned. So I'll clean the fibers off, but I'll now leave behind a residue. So that immediately gives a hint to someone that you have just cleaned an item. So if I touch something and I use a bar of soap to clean it, well, I remove the hard evidence, but now there's a residue. And soap is pretty common. And the color of the color of the residue will resemble the bar of soap you used. So if you used Omega soap, it'll be blue, and that can easily link it back to you. However, Syndicate soap is not the only red soap in the game, so it's worth considering the type of bar of soap you use to clean something, but that is what a residue is. I saw somebody was asking what residue is. Soap cleaning an object leaves a residue, and it's pretty descriptive. I mean, slippery brown residue, that's soap. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but as far as I'm aware, residue never goes away. So even using this still leaves some form of evidence behind, but all it tells us a detective is that the person they're following or tracking is trying to wipe their prints, which that alone could be enough to throw off some not as determined detectives. So it's something worth considering. Now we introduce a new element to the forensic system, and that is DNA. If you ever hit anyone with any melee weapon, that will automatically leave that person's DNA on the weapon. This opens up a massive pool for investigating fights. For example, if you are ever getting jumped by a syndicate agent or anyone, you should absolutely try your hardest to make sure you land a hit on them with any form of weapon in the game. It doesn't matter what. It can be something as simple as a screwdriver. If I get a single hit on my attacker and I drop the weapon, say I die, I get taken to a secondary location, if that syndicate agent does not clean up the evidence, their DNA will be on that screwdriver or weapon. So for example, I hit that person with my screwdriver, so they have the ACG DNA blood type, whatever you want to call it, on there, and my blood type is AAG. So, and I hit myself with a crowbar. So in any fight, if you could just scratch your opponent with a physical melee weapon, that alone, that DNA, could be enough to get that person caught down the line. Yes, you can make yourself disappear off criminal records and stuff. That is something you can do. But you cannot hide the fact that your DNA was at a crime scene unless you take the time to mop up the blood, wipe all the prints off the weapon, take the weapons and hide them in the secondary location, you name it. And in case somebody's fingerprints or record is deleted off the computer, you can always use a forensic pad to actually find that person's fingerprints at least. So for example, I just scan myself with this pad. The pad is 10E, and just to double check, yes, that is my fingerprint. So that means with a forensic pad, even if there's no power, the computers are gone, the records are wiped, whatever, you can still find somebody's fingerprints. There's also humane ways of finding out somebody's DNA. Fingerprints is easy, you just use a forensic pad. But if somebody sips a soda can, for example, you could then just use a forensic scanner on that soda can to find somebody's DNA. So you don't only just need blood. So say you're interrogating somebody and you saw or suspect their DNA was at a crime site or a crime scene, and you can't find their DNA in the records, say they're using a DNA scrambler or something, give them a can of soda, have them sip it, and then test the rim or whatever of the soda can, and you can find their DNA. So it's like actual like detective work, pretty reminiscent of like I guess reality. At least I've seen that in shows. I don't know if detectives do shit like that. Also, you can actually take the just a small sample of their blood and use that as a forensic scanner. They can bitch and moan all they want, but I can't imagine taking a small blood sample would raise too many eyebrows, especially at nanotressin. So finding DNA of somebody is very possible. Also, I will use this as a demonstration purpose as well. If a fight ever gets really bloody and there's any form of blood pools on the ground, so I'll just bleed on this tile and I'll make this person bleed on this tile, you'll see that there will be multiple DNAs on each blood tile. Of course, you could clean this up so the victor or the syndicate agent could take the time to clean this up, but you're going to want to make sure you write down or print out the DNAs of blood puddles and compare them to figure out who was the victim, who was the perpetrator, the winner, loser, etc. But that's enough about DNA. Even if all forms of forensic fail, there is the electronic forensics, I'll call them. Anytime you access something with a lock, I mean airlock, locked locker, etc., it'll leave something that can be traced with a LogProbe. The detective and head of security have this by default. So all you do as a detective is you open the app and you can left click anything with a access to it. So this example, a airlock, it will tell you who and what accessed this. And I did a video on this before, but I'm keeping all together. And this has changed. This now shows your job. So I'm a detective. I have opened this door. My name is Gilas Dear Kaza, I don't know. And it will show every single time I interact with this door. Even if I throw my PDA at the door and rescan it, it will accurately show that that PDA was used to open the door. So you can toss a card at it, open it manually, open it by hand, bump into it. That counts as an access log. Where this is really powerful is because Borgs don't have DNA, Borgs don't have fingerprints, but if they open the door, they will be logged automatically on it. So that is a way to forensically track Borgs, as I know Borgs are really hard to lock down. So if you see a Borg going into the captain's office and the captain's saying, hey, my stuff's missing, and there's no glove evidence on anything other than the captain, but somebody accessed this door and it was a robot, it was probably them. Blow their ass up. That's why the detective, when played right, can catch every syndicate agent. Even the most stealthy people on the station can be caught, even with DNA scramblers, if you just steal their DNA off a soda can or something. You cannot hide forever in this game, and that is very important to know as a syndicate agent. You could cover your tracks as much as you want, but a good detective will find you. This is also very useful for things like comms console, like sabotaging or people calling the shuttle when you don't know who did it. Yes, you can use agent IDs and stuff to hide your ID here. I'm not going to show the whole process. I don't want to make this video forever, but it just copies your name and access. So you actually have to access the door. So like if I try to touch a door, well, I can open this door, but if I just touch this console and I don't have permission to do anything, it won't log it. It won't say I accessed it because I can't. So if somebody with an agent ID opens a door and they're like a command door and their job is listed as passenger or something, that person has access they shouldn't have. It's just something worth considering. But for example, for a comms console, I can't interact with it. But if somebody who can interact with it were to make an announcement, I could then scan that comms console, figure out which comm console they used, what time, and who did it. Of course, again, you can use fake IDs here, which people often do for comms consoles, but this is just something that could potentially help you find out who the suspect is. Of course, if you know somebody interacted with it electronically, you should also take the time to forensically scan it, which, of course, that's me touching it, and Borgs don't leave evidence behind, but Borgs can't hide their digital signatures. Well, not quite. Devices can be hacked. So with a screwdriver, wire cutter, and some gloves, you can normally hack the LogProbe off devices. However, things like computers, you actually can't do that. But for doors, you can hack the log part of it. So for example, I've screwdrivered this door. I'll snip this wire, which is the log wire. Now, anytime I interact with this door, it will not be logged. So you can use this to evade security or detection. If you multi-tool it, I'll just show it. If you use a multi-tool instead of snipping the wire, this just lets the person know that you are actively tampering with them. So if you really want to fuck with a detective and make their brain hurt, do this, because it will directly tell them, hey, this person is trying to mess with you and they did it recently. And if you didn't figure it out by now, the time correlates to how long the server's been going. So if you see somebody did something 5 seconds ago on the shift duration, that just happened. If it was an hour ago, it's probably a dead trail. So that is really it for advanced forensics. I covered the electronic forensics, which is LogProbe, log accesses, and cover DNA, fingerprints, and residues. If you have any more questions, feel free to ask. I'm sure I'm missing something. I'm not an expert detective, but I'm just sharing the mechanics. Thank you for watching.